this rare blood cancer, Polycythemia Vera, I had two choices. I could spend my days thinking of the worst, stressing about the worst, or I could trust and keep living. Hi, my YouTube friends. Well, welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. And if you've been here before, thanks for returning and watching another video. Today, I really wanted to share my travels. Well, touch on it because it really has been truly healing, and I came back almost with a renewed sense of energy and purpose. Welcome to my YouTube channel, my friends. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back and watching another video. And if you're new here, welcome to my evolution. When I had started this channel, I really wanted just to help other people, specifically women who were going through divorce and heartbreak, because that's what I was going through, and I wanted to use my pain to help other women. And then I lost my parents, and so there was a grief journey there, and now I have my own diagnosis that I'm working through. So if you've been here before, you probably are aware that I was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer called Polycythemia Vera. And you know, when we hear the big C word, it does, even though I consider myself to be a very strong-minded person, to say that it didn't affect me at all would not be the truth. And I think now, looking back on when I first got diagnosed, it really affected me more than I realized, because I think, and anyone who may have a cancer diagnosis can probably relate to this. You know, even if we are a strong-minded individual or we have our faith, it's hard to grapple with the word cancer, because, and especially being for myself, you know, being a mom to 4 young kids, you think about like all these, you know, questions in your mind, like, am I gonna live long enough? How long am I gonna be here? What is my treatment gonna look like? How is it going to affect my health, my energy? And in some ways, there's a part of you that feels like, you know, it dies a little bit to when you hear the word cancer. And in my situation, as you may know, there's been a lot of death in my family. You know, I've lost my grandma, my 2 aunts, and they were young. My stepfather, who was also young. My mom, you know, she was older, but not very old, you know. And so with the losses of, especially with my stepdad and my mom, was incredibly difficult. And I felt like a huge loss of really half of myself. And so, you know, it's not that, I mean, I think all of us on some level is a little bit afraid of death, but really it wasn't really death that, for myself at least, that I was scared of. You know, it was more so of the thoughts of like an early death, of leaving my young kids and, you know, being without a mom. And so that weighs heavy on your heart and your soul, you know. And so it really stole a lot of my energy. And I feel like, I know that I have Polycythemia Vera, which explained a lot of why I was so exhausted all the time, because I couldn't understand why I was so exhausted all the time. Like, I didn't feel like my exhaustion was normal, but at least having the diagnosis, I'm like, okay, that's why I'm so tired all the time. And so, however, though, I feel like getting and hearing the word cancer, it really stole my energy. But at the same time, mentally, you know, I was fighting it with, you know, my mindset and getting in God's word and having my faith. But I also made the decision in my mind that I was going to live, and I wanted to really live as much as I can fully, not just for my kids, because as moms, I know we have a tendency to give all of ourselves to our children, but to also live for myself, for my well-being, so that I could be well for my kids. And so, of course, I am a normal human being after all. I had feelings of fear, sadness, and I wouldn't call any, not depression. I was not depressed, but of course, sadness, and feeling like I'm no longer myself, because I can't work out as hard as I used to. I don't have the same energy to go, 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 go and do all the things like I used to be able to do. And that's something that I really had to grapple with. And but then I felt this calling and I told my kids too. I said, you know what? Once a year, I'm going to do a trip that is just for myself. And the first trip that I ever took was actually last year for my birthday with a girlfriend who also was turning 50. So I went to Spain and Portugal, which was truly incredible. And this year I did Poland, Slovakia, and Austria. And I am so incredibly grateful and so glad that I chose to do this solo trip. And being a mom, honestly, it is such a struggle. So, even though I had my book tripped, I bought the flight, and then, as mom, we always struggle with the guilt where we're like, oh, should I be doing this? Should I be going alone? And then, like, am I crazy? And initially, I actually had planned for a month, which now I know was over ambitious for me anyways. So anyways, but I'm glad I did not decide to cancel it or opt out on not going because I don't want to leave my kids, having mom guilt. I did it, and I flew to Poland and ventured on this incredible soul healing, re-energizing trip to Europe. I'm so incredibly glad and so grateful that I did it and I was able to do it, and because it was incredibly healing. So with my best Remy packed with 2 ice packs that made my bag extra heavy, there I was on this solo adventure that was just absolutely healing. I can't even put it into words and express how incredible it really was, and how I didn't even realize how much I needed it for my soul and my spirit, and to just get closer to God. So I trusted God. I hopped on a plane and was traveling alone. And I mean, I missed my kids like crazy along the way. But I trusted that this was a journey that I felt like He was calling me to do. And at first, when your first thoughts, when you think about traveling to Europe, you think about all the beautiful architecture. And don't get me wrong, definitely the architecture is absolutely stunning and breathtaking and beautiful. But you don't really think about how it truly moves your soul and your spirit, and how incredibly healing it truly is. I really honestly didn't expect for it to be so such a soul healing experience. And like I said, it's so hard to put it into words because I mean, throughout Poland and Slovakia and Austria, and going, in the cathedrals, and I can't even put into words to describe how incredibly just mind-blowing, like the beauty of the stained glasses and the organs. And there really is truly something so moving when you're in these cathedrals that have been built with such intention and soul, and and the feeling of all the prayers that have gone through these cathedrals over the hundreds of years. And it was just being able to sit in the quiet of praying and feeling like you're in the presence of God. It was the ability to sit quietly in the cathedrals and pray and not asking him for anything, not even asking what the 20 years or, what my future is going to look like, what's going to happen, but just being fully present. And not even praying for myself, but praying for my loved ones, praying for my children, praying for the healing of this world. And at the end, yes, asking for my own healing, in the sense of healing any traumas that I have experienced, and being able to break generational curses that have been in my family. And it was just, I don't know how to put it into words, but it was so incredibly healing for me to go through all the incredible cathedrals and just be in his presence. I don't know how else to word it, but just to be in his presence. And then, it really dawns on you that even through all your difficulties, your trials, your heartbreaks, your tribulations in life, I know it's hard to fathom, and people think or wonder, like, how can you still think that there is God? But I truly believe that he is with us through it all, and the thing is, it's not that we're promised an easy life, and I don't think an easy life actually gives us a happy life, because it is actually through our hardships and our losses that we can appreciate and be more grateful and be more happy, because we understand loss. I know it's kind of like a conundrum, but the one thing I can say for myself, at least, and I know it's something that we all can, it takes work on building that faith, is that he has actually always been with me through it all, through everything, even now. And as I sat there in these cathedrals, in these old buildings, thinking to myself, there were believers who prayed through incredibly worse things, and I think that's another perspective that we can always take on as well. When we start feeling sorry for ourselves, I know I did that, in times before when I felt sorry for myself, I would think about the struggles that my mom had to go through. Like, I can't even fathom what she lived through. And so that was the same thing for me, like sitting in these cathedrals, thinking of people who've prayed through wars and loss and suffering that we can't even comprehend in this day and age, and that really just gives us more perspective and faith to, that people still continued to have faith and didn't lose their faith, and actually even turned to God even more during these incredibly difficult times, and so that's a reminder to us to also do the same, because that is what gives us strength to keep moving forward and keep moving on and hanging onto a hope for a future. And that brings me to one of my all-time favorite Bible verses, which I'm sure it is for you too if you're familiar with God's word, is to be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. One of my favorites. I actually made, they're too small for my kids now, but I made my kids a hoodie with that Bible verse, Joshua 1:9. But that's a reminder for us that to be strong and courageous in all things, not just when things are easy and life is good and things are perfect, but, in all things and at all times. So this is your little friendly reminder in this video that to be strong and courageous, and no matter what it is, whether it's through divorce, whether it's through loss, whether it's through cancer, whatever it is to hang on to God's word and to be strong and courageous, and to know that God is with us no matter what. And as for me, what I learned on this trip is that my healing isn't necessarily even about removing the diagnosis. This is something that I may live with until my last day on this earth. And what I learned and realized is that healing begins when fear loses its grip on us. I think that's the key. I think we allow, and it's not just in my cancer diagnosis, but in so many aspects of our lives, we allow fear to have such a grip on us, to hold us back on so many of our hopes and our dreams and our aspirations, and fear is of the enemy. Fear is of the enemy. And so when fear loses our grip on us and we are again reminded to be strong and courageous, we can begin to live. Because truly, life is a gift, and each new day that we get is a gift. And that's the thing, about traveling, because it forces you to really be present, right? Because I think in everyday life, when we're living our everyday normal life, we forget to be truly present. And that's the beauty in traveling. And for me, seeing all the beauty in Vienna and Salzburg and Hallstatt and Krakow and Gdansk, these places just remind you that there's so much beauty in life still, and that we have to just learn to be present and be reminded that each day that we still have, and that we still have breath in our lungs, that it is a gift still. So just to wrap up this video, I would just say that I also, because I know I really have changed. If you've been here with me for a little while, I know I don't have like a ton of subscribers or anything, but I've changed my direction, if you will, a couple of times. But now, having clarity coming back from my trip, I realized that I really just want to continue moving forward with sharing my journey, yes, with Polycythemia Vera, to help anyone else who may be feeling down about the diagnosis, but sharing how faith is keeping me strong through this evolution and this journey. And now that I'm back home, back to reality, back to my kids, and back to my best Remy injections. Well, I mean, I had to take my best Remy injections while I was traveling as well. And back to, the doctor's appointment next week. Actually, I have an appointment at the cancer center with my hematologist. But what I will say is that I came back not the same woman, in a sense, because I do feel a sense of renewal, a sense of energy. And for the first time, actually, I feel like my normal self again, because I haven't felt like my normal self for quite some time now. And so I am at home and I have more peace, and I feel more gratitude. Practice gratitude every day. That's the key. And more faith that I have a deeper conviction. I feel like, faith is something, it's like an ebb and flow. You have moments where you're like, you question your faith. But yeah, coming back, I feel like I have a stronger conviction in my faith. And so I want to move forward with sharing God's word and sharing my faith. And I will now end this video by saying to you, please, please be encouraged. And again, go back to that Bible verse of being strong and courageous, no matter what you're being faced with, whether, it's a divorce, a betrayal, a diagnosis, a loss of a loved one, that I want you to know something, that if you have breath in your lungs, life isn't over. And even if it feels like you're in the deepest dark, because I've been there, I know what it feels like to feel like you're in this deep, deep, dark place. And how do you get out? How do you survive? That I want you to know that there is still beauty ahead, and there is still joy that you can have in life. And healing is a journey. We can have bad days and we can have good days, and that's okay. And honestly, sometimes healing doesn't look like the way we expect it to look, and healing can happen in such an unexpected way. But what I will leave you with is, if it's possible, don't wait for someday, because someday may not come. And, if it's doable, make it happen, and it doesn't have to be, something like going across the world and, going to a Europe trip. But if it's something that's been on your bucket list forever and you have the means to, I would encourage you to do it. And I know it's hard. Like I said, I can relate, having that mom guilt or whatever, or even just guilt in general of doing something nice for yourself. Go and do it, because it could be the most soul healing thing that you can do for yourself, So I will say that live life with a sense of gratitude as much as you can, because gratitude is what opens up more fullness in our life. Do the thing, whatever it is that's been on your, list. Knock off a couple of things off your list, because life is too short. Tomorrow is not promised. And I will end this video by, of course, having to say that if you got some value, please do like this video. And if you feel encouraged, please do subscribe, because I hope to share my journey as I go along with my diagnosis, walking through this with my faith, and healing along the way, and just learning how to trust Jesus in every season of my life, and hopefully yours as well. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. God bless.